I think the startup ecosystem, I think what Kelly Jones and Black Hatch and Be Nimble are doing is they're providing an opportunity for minority entrepreneurs not to just be recognized and noticed, but to work together, right? When we're in the same room, and we find somebody that looks like us in the tech industry, we're automatically going to be gravitated to them anyways, because the room is so small from a minority standpoint. But on top of that, Kelly Jones has encouraged people to work together and go out of their way to be sure that the startup ecosystem continues to be recognized in Indianapolis, right? I think there are a lot of people up and coming, but I think a good majority of the startups in Indy that are up and coming are minority owned. And with all that being said, you can see things like 16 Tech in our future, the efforts that Starla Hart is doing over there to ensure that we have a space where we can collaborate and continue the efforts of working together, I think are going to allow for innovation to go far beyond what we expect in Indianapolis. I think Hoosier hospitality is a big word that we lived on for a long time. And I think, we've been proven it. Indianapolis has proven that, we're a city willing to give and, provide resources. And when a global pandemic happens, people like the Indianapolis Indy Chamber of Commerce throws together all of these grants and funds and partners with Forward Cities and BOIs, right? So the ability to help is there. And I think Indianapolis will continue to do that for the startup ecosystem founders. And result, the startup ecosystem founders is going to be able to impact millions of lives, right? And that's what I think from a co-op enterprise perspective, that we're not looking to build, new forms of trust at the Halo app specifically. We're just looking to build something that can connect trust, right? Because there's all these communities that trust one another already. We just want to see if there's a way that we can connect them all when it comes to finance. And in result, they'll be lending and borrowing amongst each other. No longer have to go to cash advance locations in banks, right? We essentially create a new ecosystem. We create a new economy. We create an entirely new definition of what an investor looks like. Because as a minority, right, we never really had those privileges or had those rights because the education wasn't there. So the Halo App wanted to make it simple, and we were able to come to this conclusion by working with people in our community, right?
Mm-hmm. And I think that's something that people often, I don't want to say necessarily overlook, but you're 100% right when you say that Indianapolis is very giving, that Hoosier hospitality. I'm going to school at IUPUI for civic leadership and nonprofit management, and looking at the civic landscape and the, the grants writing and the program formation landscape here in Indy, it is very large and very well developed. So I definitely agree when you say it's coalescing all of these different trust networks and putting it into something a little bit more cohesive and a little bit more forward, right? Putting it all together.
I think aligned, right? I think everyone had their own mission, but I think now everyone's focused on, just making the environments better because everyone was affected by the same thing.
Right. And Kalia, it looked like you had something to say earlier. I didn't want to miss you.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. I was just going to say, I think going back to what I think your original question was, what would be helped most by a cooperative model? And so some of the thoughts that I've had, from my previous years working at IU Health in their community outreach and engagement department, a large part of my work was on food access issues. And so at that time, I was helping to operate the Garden on the Go program. And what I recognized in running that program was that obviously, we were band-aiding, a food access problem. And so but what we really needed was food access solutions. And so I definitely think that food access and grocery access in general is one of those that could be benefited from the cooperative model, because what we're not going to see, or not very likely to see, is the return of traditional grocery stores to urban areas where they don't think that there's enough rooftops and enough disposable income to support their profit model. They're operating on really thin margins. And so I think the opportunity for cooperative model, whether it be the secondary that Ms. Nemhard spoke about, through perhaps something like I think about the traditional farmers markets, or like what we have downtown, instead of having one in a downtown area, which is not necessarily accessible by, a lot of folks in urban areas in particular, in part because you can't afford to live downtown. So that's not affordable anymore. There could be a network of farmers markets that operates in that secondary space and buys together and keeps prices down. I think in addition, one of the challenges that more traditional institutions face, especially in the nonprofit institutions, is that a lot of times they have, pretty small workforces and their health insurance costs are really high. So I think about small businesses and small nonprofits who could be collaborating to drive down the price of their health insurance by forming cooperatives to, in particular, purchase the health insurance benefit that they need, because it's all about spreading risk out to lower that cost. So those are two areas where I see there being some really strong possibilities if there's the political will and interest to make co-ops beneficial to a lot more folks.
I definitely think there is, and we spoke about that a little bit earlier, or at least it was presented earlier, that it's about shifting the Overton window towards those cooperatives, because right now we don't incentivize knowledge based around them. People are not really activated to what cooperatives can bring to an enterprise, or how it could benefit their lives directly. We are very caught up in our current capitalist system, our current materialist system, very individual. So yeah, excellent point. Excellent point.
One last thing, just before, I'll be remiss if I didn't point this out.
No, go for it.
That's already happening. We have a group doing this is in real estate, right? The term private finance, I don't know if everyone is aware of the private finance, meaning I could be the bank, right? Meaning if you want to purchase a house, I get a home and clean the home up and I want to sell it to you. Now you don't have to go through the red tape of going through a bank to get a mortgage, because now you could come to an individual. Because real estate is so cash intensive, we have a group of about 10 that are purchasing homes to become the bank and become the private financers, to be able to allow people to purchase these homes and not have to go through the red tape, and then you end up owning a home in 10 years. So things like that, and those tests that we've been doing to see how we can grow and scale this kind of things and get more people involved. What we've learned is just a lot of Black folks that are out here, middle-class folks who are working and looking to put their dollars into something. And the co-op thought process allows that to happen, but in the real estate area is even so much bigger, right? Because it goes back to the ownership piece. So pulling people together, and we've done some tests with it and said, wow, this is a real need in our community, and we can actually help people overcome those red tape that they face and help them meet their dream of owning a home. So that's another area that has some huge, huge opportunities as far as co-ops are concerned.
And I think that's kind of the next question that I wanted to move into is, what should be the first steps to organizing and making shifts towards that cooperative model? How can we bring in more, working class or even lower class people of all races and backgrounds, and kind of get them activated and get them on the same page in creating this cooperative model?
I think what Kalia said, so go ahead, Kalia.
I was just going to say, I think you almost have to tell the stories. The examples that Ms. Nebhard gave us were fantastic. I had never heard of the vast majority of those entities before, and even the ones that I had heard of, I didn't know that they were cooperatives or of a cooperative model. And so I think telling the story, oftentimes, helps people imagine something that they might not have thought was possible, or maybe they thought, I've got this idea, that doesn't sound workable. But to see these entities that have thrived or are currently thriving, I think is a really important step in that process to getting people to think about how could we do this together. Oftentimes people just need to see it before they believe that they can do it too.
Mm-hmm.
I think the other thing she talked about was the trust, and that people come together in training and learning. And then as they come together in that area, that trust is built. I mean, because you go through something with people. So I think she talked about not just coming together in 2 days and say, okay, we're going to do a co-op and let's go do it, right? But those things, what's amazing to me, those things are so foreign to our psyche.
Mm-hmm.
As far as just say, hey, look, let's come together and start having these conversations and bringing a diverse group of people. So I think Kalia said middle class, wealth, low middle class, poor. It doesn't matter how much you can put into it. The fact that you can put something into it, either your talent, your expertise, or even dollars to do this kind of things. Those are the things that we have to start sparking and bringing people together that we hope is InnoPower working with Forward Cities and Kepper and all the entities in our town to see how we educate people on how we can become owners and we can start developing this wealth from within. And it takes things like co-ops to do it, because the reason a lot of us are in situations is because of the capital. And that's the bottom line. People don't have access to capital. And if we're going to get capital and get more ownership and own more real estate on the east side and different sides of town, it's going to take this kind of thinking. So I think the bigger question is, how do we start thinking of coming together and educating folks and building those environments to bring people together to educate them about the opportunity?
And I think you spoke on it a little bit right there, is that with living in a capitalist system, most people are not capitalists at all. Like, most people do not actually own capital. So automatically the system is working against them. And I think that's something that is incredible about the cooperative model, because it's literally saying you have the democratic control of this institution or this enterprise. You get to dedicate or allocate resources based on the collective view of that particular enterprise. I think that's very powerful. I think that's very powerful.
And I think that so I keep going back to being Nigerian, right? That's what I know, right? When I was growing up and I went to my mom's village and dad's village, the village came together to provide resources for the village, right? Yeah, you had people with wealth, but together things were done as a group, right? And the investments that were made until today, I get people call me, a group of market women who want to purchase something to help them out, but it's never one person. It's always a group that pull their resources together and say, look, we're trying to buy a generator, right? Can you purchase a generator from US and send it to us? But here in the US, it's so foreign. I hardly meet people that think about or talk about together. We compete so much, right? And it's okay to compete, right? But we compete against each other, and most of us don't have the capital. So we end up competing against.
What are you even competing with?
Exactly.
I think about, like, in this global pandemic, how states are competing against other states to buy PPE and to get testing, and I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous. That is not a place where we should be competing. So yeah, it is truly ingrained in every way, in every part of our society, that individualism and that competition, and that dog eat dog type of mentality. I know that we can do better. We've seen better. We've experienced better. But at our core, we've got some, we don't have a good foundation. We've got a really rocky foundation. And that's really scary when you think about how quickly a pandemic, brought our country, really to its knees. If you really want to stop and think about it. I know that, I've had to turn off the news in a lot of cases, one, to protect my own mental health, but then two, so I don't have to hear the lies. I mean, honestly, and, we know that as who we thought we were, perhaps is not what is being realized. And so I think that in order to rebuild our way out of this, we really are going to have to think about how to work together, what businesses will remain viable, how we'll help them to remain viable, and what that looks like in terms of our individual choices as well. I think that unfortunately, there's going to be a challenge as it relates to consumerism and how we support each other. For example, maybe folks won't be buying high-end clothes anymore, especially if we're going to be sheltering in place or whatever you want to call it for the moment. I may not need to have those labels on from the waist down. So we have to think about what businesses, really remain important to who we are and what we're going to be going forward.
And I mean, you even see stuff like that. We'll be moving into audience questions here in a moment. So if you want to start typing those into the chat, or getting those put into your mind now. But just real quickly, I think that's a great point. Starting to see what commodities are essential and which ones are not, because even in places like food, I know there was a really big story lately or recently about how people are not buying certain items at the grocery store, certain name brands. They're going all for like the Kroger brand, the Great Value brand, and you're starting to see how quickly the tone will shift from bad and bougie to essential when the cards are on the table and you really start to think about, what do I really need compared to what do I think I need to fit into a certain role or a certain model.
I think what will be interesting too, what I think we might see, I'm just waiting for some brand, I guess, to do it, is, those things that we end up needing. People always have a way to polarize or to segregate based on class. And so I imagine, this is going to sound silly, but I'm pretty sure somebody's going to start, putting, Swarovski crystals and things like that on face masks. And, you're going to start having Burberry face mask and Gucci face mask. I mean, like everything that we say that we need, there's always going to be a way to kind of stratify like the haves from the have-nots. And so I think that will be a shift. It'll be interesting if it doesn't occur, because I honestly would be surprised. But I'm seeing already, better designs on face masks, not just kind of the traditional 3-ply kind of, things that you might see at a doctor's office in traditional wear. So,
and sometimes you just got to ask why. Like, why are we out here doing this? Oh snap.
I think when we talk about, I think when we talk about like necessities, you made a big point. People are not being as bad and bougie as they initially before. They're really paying attention to what they need these days. And I think the thing we can do to work together is by giving them the right tools, right? The right resources so they can work together. And it goes back to Mill's point, capital. And for the longest time, people have been judged on how to receive capital. And I think, going into this new normal, we're going to see new types of credit scores. We're going to see, environments intentionally doing what they can to make people feel safe. Because if they don't feel safe, if they continue to feel judged, it's going to be tough to work together, right? We're just going to continue to get further and further apart.
100%. 100%. So from the peanut gallery, do we have any questions for our speakers today?
Yeah, this peanut gallery got a question.
Yeah, go for it.
Emil, if you could share a little bit about your upcoming social innovation conference you plan. I think folks would love to hear more about what you're thinking about, how they can come involved. And my second question is, at some point, a little more about how the Halo project works and how can one get involved with it. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Last year we did a conference. We just wanted to test, right? We didn't have an idea if the people really wanted. We felt like people wanted a space to come together. So we just did it to test and see. And what we saw from the conference were two things. One is, as a culture in Indianapolis, especially with African Americans, we haven't developed a culture that we pay dollars to go to a space with other African Americans to get better and learn from each other. It's just not part of what's been done here in a long time. Most of the people, when they go to professional development, their work pays for it. So I learned that okay, people are not willing to pay $100 for 2 days to come and interact and share ideas and learn from each other, especially as a community. At least not yet. It's not part of the culture. What I did learn is a lot of people want to support such an environment. They want people to come together. They want to understand, how do we build our social capital? How do we focus on opportunities and identify opportunities in our community for entrepreneurs, right? And how do we listen to ideas? So this year, in the co-op mindset, the way we organize our conference is people own platforms within our platform. So Kepler owns a platform within our platform. And Kepler is going to do what Kepler is really good at doing, what they want to share and what they want to build locally. Things like that are what we're creating is, and for the first time this year, we're also going to have a huge global part of our conference where we have entrepreneurs from Nigeria. They're going to participate in the pitch competition. They're going to be able to engage local entrepreneurs here in India and just share ideas about what they're doing and what can be done. A good example is Hello App. We have a conference call here in a week or so with some folks in Nigeria about Hello App, possibly building a platform there. So we're saying opportunities exist globally, right? And if you're starting a business and looking to go into entrepreneurship and you're only thinking local, you've totally missed the boat. So our conference is just about that, is giving local organizations a platform to share what they do and continue to grow what they're doing, but also living with 4 key goals, which is one is how do we develop a sustainable youth entrepreneurship development program here in our city? How do we establish a process of developing skill, right? Which is skill. How do we develop skilled Black entrepreneurs with the skills needed to go into any industry because you have the skill? How do we develop a consistent environment for entrepreneurs to develop their social capital? Meaning connecting with anchor institutions and those things. The Chamber has the Connection program for Latinos, and that's glaring. It's there. It's on the website. Everybody sees it. And they maximize their program. They have direct interaction and connection with anchor institutions through the Connection program. And then finally is the capital, right? Once you identify the skilled entrepreneur, right? Keep in mind, I keep saying the skilled entrepreneur and not the idea. Once you identify the skilled entrepreneur, having the capital to support the entrepreneur. So last year, Educate Me won our pitch competition last year at our conference. Today, Educate Me has acquired over $400,000 in financing to do what they're doing. And again, as the skilled entrepreneur is like Kalia said, it's also the entrepreneur that's come up with a product or service that benefits our community. And again, going back to Nigeria, I see in Nigeria today, so many young entrepreneurs are growing at a rapid pace because they're coming up with technologies and products to benefit the masses. 20 years ago, Nigerian entrepreneurs were trying to come up with products to benefit the British. And they kept finding out that, you know what, you're not wanted there. Today, everybody's coming out with products and services to benefit the masses in Nigeria, the price points, all those things. So in Indianapolis and the Black communities, most of the people I meet are coming up with products and services that don't benefit Black people in the community. And today, that is the biggest opportunity is in our Black communities, and we need to take advantage of that. So that's pretty much what our conference is going to focus on. But it's not us doing it, it's everybody doing it. And getting everybody to be on the platform, from Forward Cities to showcasing the Hello App and what the Hello App is doing to say that we have Black entrepreneurs here in our city in technology that are developing products that meet the needs of people. Quick thing about Hello App before I go to them is, I knew it, but I never knew this in real-time dollars. The amount of dollars that leave our community from predatory loans. In Indianapolis alone, you're talking about tens and tens of millions of dollars. It's unbelievable. It is so crazy. When the kids say the trap, it's the trap all the way. And we have no way of controlling that because we don't have banks, and people continue to flock to the check cashing places. So the reason we support the Hello Up and we roll with them is saying, look, this is an alternative for our community. To be able to get a small loan and get 10 to 12% compared to 250%, you know, it's a no-brainer. And that's what I think we should all be pushing and pushing. When we talk about tech, is pushing those kind of things. So that's really what our conference is going to be in August. And everybody that's involved in this ecosystem, I love, because we all interact with each other, we read about each other, and I think we all try to support each other, is going to be a part of this. And it's really trying to showcase what everybody is doing, that we do have some things in place in Indy. And I get tired of people talking like we just don't have anything. And I keep saying there are a lot of things in place, and we needed the support was in place, and stop trying to recreate the wheel.
Thank you, Emil. I appreciate that. And thank you so much, Emotep, for having me here. I really do appreciate that as well. The Halo app is a private peer-to-peer lending community, as I mentioned to begin with. The best way, I think, to give you insight on what exactly the Halo app is, what it's capable of, and why it was created is just to share my story. I was born in Denver, Colorado. My parents had 6 kids total, including me. My father was in construction and my mother was in education. However, my mother often worked 2 jobs, right? Picked up an extra job at Kmart or King Soopers or Safeway. And then my father was, an entrepreneur on the side. After his 50-hour-a-week job, he would go sell burritos at Coors Field or mow lawns, shovel snow. So it wasn't the fact that we weren't working. It wasn't that we weren't actively trying to bring income into our household. It wasn't that we weren't skilled, right? It wasn't that we weren't trying, but no matter what, it felt like when the beginning of the month came, it felt like we couldn't breathe, right? We were deciding on what bill to miss rather than what bills to pay. And I lived through that my entire childhood, right? And often, as we very well know, if parents are feeling stress, a lot of times that stress is passed on to children. So the Halo app was created for the number one reason, and that was to remove that financial stress, right? Because when we're living financially stressed, not only do we feel like we can't living in our freedom, right? We're not functioning properly. We're, deciding to, we're making bad decisions. We're robbing people, or violence is going up. And there's a lot of different things that our lives are taking because of stress. And as I got older, I realized that it wasn't just me who was dealing with that issue. It was a lot of the people in my community, a lot of my homies, a lot of my friends, people who I grew up with. And I didn't want to live that way. So I focused really heavily on my credit, and I figured out how to manipulate it. I got a good job, started making good money. And the very first thing I started doing was giving back to my community, right, in the form of loans. And that was people like my mom, my brothers, my sisters, my friends. And then I got an opportunity to move to Indianapolis. I worked for an organization called Home Advisor. Was fortunate to meet Taylor Simpson, who is the founder CEO of the Halo app, and we decided to go for it. And when we went for it, we had 2 things in mind. We wanted to create an opportunity for people to access cash fairly. As Emil said, predatory lending is massive, right? It takes away not only tens and tens and tens of millions of dollars away from minority individuals, it's taking money away from anyone who participates. Most often minorities. And then second, we wanted to create a new type of investor, someone who can be empowered, someone who can feel confident, someone who feels like investing is easy, right? And a lot of times those opportunities don't exist in underserved communities. So what the Halo app does is we connect people who are willing to lend with people who are willing to borrow. So if you think about it like an Uber or Lyft model, we are a marketplace. Uber and Lyft connects riders and drivers. We connect backers and borrowers. So if I were in need, I can go to the Halo app. I can go ahead and I can tell you how much I need to borrow, up to $1,000, let you know how long I need to pay that loan back, 2 to 24 weeks. And that request will go to an entire economy of backers who will then make an offer on what that loan would cost you, okay? Right now, the average fee is pretty low. We're about 6%. Our backers have responded real well due to COVID. But, we do have loans going out at the 0% rate. It really just depends on what you deem fair. One thing that really makes us different here at the Halo app is we give the freedom to the users, right? And when I say that is you walk into a cash advance location, they tell you you must pay back in 30 days or else. And that's when you really start going in this vicious loop where you're paying 300, 400, 500%. An article just came out on ABC News the other day that a man in Kansas City paid $50,000 in interest for $2,500 worth of loans, right? And that's the problem we're eliminating, because when you come to the Halo app, you type in what you need and how long you need, and a backer can make you an offer, say, hey, Josh, I know you need 200. I'm going to charge you a 5% backer fee or a 10% backer fee, all the way up to 35%. And the wonderful thing that at the Halo app is, as the borrower, you can say yes or no. If you don't think that offer's fair, decline it. If you think the offer is fair, accept it. So we put the freedom in your hands as the borrower to deem what fair and what isn't. And as the backer, we're giving these people an opportunity who never had a chance to invest in real people with real lives for a purpose far beyond than traditional investment opportunities that exist on the market today. Okay. So the point, the data point that we really try to analyze most often, that we're paying attention to most often, is how often borrowers are becoming backers, right? That really starts to tell a story that, we can flip poverty on its head. One day you can need money, the next day you're investing in somebody else. And when you're creating a community of empowered investors, people who are confident, that raises not just the will of the individual, but the entire community that they're a part of. Okay. One thing I mentioned as well is, right, people are being judged the same way that they've been judged for hundreds of years. And that the best way, the best example of that is traditional credit. FICO credit was built, with redlining in mind. It was built, 150 years ago. So no matter what we do and what adjustments we make today to that FICO credit score, one race will always be 100 years ahead of the other. Okay. So that's where you get the generational wealth gap from. What the Halo app has done is we wanted to start everybody at zero. We wanted to create our own score that lets people know how trustworthy you are rather than how creditworthy you are. So when you get on our application, we're not judging you using traditional credit. We're judging you using our world-class score. And at that point in time, we're also making it anonymous. So you don't have to feel scared or nervous or judged that you need money and you're in this financial position. For the first time ever, you can go to somewhere that you trust, remaining anonymous without being judged off of traditional credit, being judged off your character. And when that happens, you really raise the will of that individual again. People think our borrowers weren't going to pay back. They're like, yo, all these people aren't going to pay back. They don't pay back cash advance locations. They never will. Our model's been proven to work because we're community-based, that 92% of the time, our people are paying back on time every time, right? So that says a lot about the people in our communities, right? Hey, just because you say they're not able and willing borrowers doesn't mean that they're not. They're capable, and they will prove you right if you put the right systems in place and motivate and inspire them along the way.
I really think you need that trust, and thank you for sharing that, Joshua. I was going to ask a little bit more about the Halo app, but I think it's always so incredible when people are like, oh, they're not going to pay it back. I'm like, would you pay it back?
Exactly.
Oh yeah, I pay it back. Of course I would. Well, then you have to extend that level of trust to other people in the community, right? Like that's how you start to build those foundations for these kind of apps to run. And I think what
Absolutely.
you're doing is very incredible.
I appreciate that, and the Halo app has a unique problem right now, and this may sound odd. We have more backers, meaning people who are willing to lend money, than people who are willing to borrow. Why? Because we need to reach these communities. We need to get them in the hand of ambassadors, of people like you who are willing to spread the word and spread this resource, because the only way this is going to work is if it remains organic and grassroots, right?
Mm-hmm.
The best way to say it is put these people on game, right? When you use the words that are in our community. If we do that for each other and we do this for the community, we'll onboard them properly, which in result will continue to positively impact the rate that these people are paying back.
And we have a question as well. Does the Halo app help with your credit score? Or, you talked a little about establishing a new form of credit. Can you elaborate a little bit more on that?
The Halo app does not believe in traditional credit models, which means FICO. So we will not help improve your score. Our goal is to hopefully, that our score scales to have the opportunity to get an apartment or get a car. That's our goal here at the Halo app, to be able to implement that into systems that will approve you for other models. Who knows? We may be, the company that just provides financing for different types of things in the future, such as auto, such as mortgage. But today it's a personal loan up to $1,000 that doesn't use traditional credit, doesn't impact traditional credit, meaning it won't help or hurt you if for any reason that you are successful or unsuccessful on the platform.
Hmm. Okay, interesting. So it's something different in almost in its entirety. So when you scale up on the or when you begin to scale up, are you trying to combat FICO credit scores and try to come
Yeah.
up as
We
an
see we see
alternative?
we see the Halo score as a competitor to FICO. Absolutely.
Interesting. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing how that pans out, and I'll definitely be spreading the word. It's
Appreciate
an
that.
incredible problem to me that you have more people willing to lend than people willing to borrow. I think that speaks a lot to where we are currently.
Yeah, I mean, if you just like, you look at these communities, everyone drives by the cash advance locations every day, right? Because they're on every corner. They drive by them, they drive by them, they drive by them. They think that's the only resource that's available to them, right? And then a lot of times the individual in these communities aren't necessarily early adopters either, right? They're timid, they're scared because they've been preyed on, they've been victims for a long time. So when I come to you and say, hey, I have something new for you, something that isn't going to hurt you, something that isn't going to take you for 500%, 600%, it's almost hard for them to trust because it sounds too good to be true because they've been hurt for so long. And when someone comes and wants to wrap you in a hug and grace and love, it's almost like, whoa, I'm not used to this. This doesn't make sense. So we really have to get these community used to it. And that's where people like Kepra, Power Forward Cities come into play because they have the reach to these communities. They let them know that they're capable and that they're able and that these resources do exist, and we're just trying to get it to them.
Yeah, it's so funny that I have to, with our people in Kepra and just like, within my own activities, try and tell people like, we're not trying to exploit you. Please trust me. We're not trying to exploit you.
Exactly.
Yeah. So are there any other questions from anybody watching right now?
If there's no questions, please visit www.thehaloapp.com. I put it in the comments here. Feel free to schedule a welcome call. If you're a backer and you want to help out and start loaning some people some money for altruistic and financial returns, we'll onboard you there. If you're a borrower and you're in need, we'll onboard you there. If any of your friends or family are borrowers in need, please send them and direct them to the website because this is a resource that's local to Indianapolis. And we want to help our people in the community of Indianapolis first. We're actually foregoing all of our revenue and providing zero fee loans from the Halo app perspective, up to $1 million in loans to ensure that we provide COVID relief as well.
Excellent. Okay, well, we're coming up on the last 10 minutes, so we'll keep going for a little bit longer.
I have a question for you, Jerry.
Yes.
So I know we are all talking about a different thing, but I know Kepler is also doing some things as far as just a lot of different things. So from a co-op standpoint, and what are your thoughts as far as Kepler and a co-op standpoint? And do you have examples of some things that you guys are doing right now, either as a collective or as a co-op, or just to share?
Well, from my limited experience working with Kepra so far, I would say that its entire model is based off of like a cooperative landscape. Like many of the employees and people who work there, it's damn near like a big family. They live and eat and work together in the same place. So off the top, the running and management of Kepra is already within a cooperative model. They're already seeing democratic control. They're seeing the allocation of not only resources, but power and management being placed in the hands of the people who work there, just off top. So that gave me that's, I mean, one of the big reasons I wanted to join in the first place. That gave me a feeling of security, knowing that I was not going to be, exploited as a worker going in, or I guess as an intern going in. And I know a lot of the different programs that we're running, whether it be Alchemy or Cafe Creative or whatever, all of our programs push forward that model of collectivism because it's just ingrained in the culture of Kepra. Like that just is what Kepra is. So I would say it's already there. It's just a matter of pushing that narrative forward, making sure that other people recognize that the top-down model is not how things have to be, and that's not how we are, right? So that's what it is to me, is really making sure we push that narrative.
And
But
so I have a question to everybody. Kalia, you as well, right? And I've been asking this question to so many people because I think we overpass it in a lot of our conversations. What role does having a Black media play in our Black community? Like, how important is it, or is it even important today with social media? And I'm really curious to hear what folks think about this, because I think we talk a lot about development, but we don't talk a lot about the platforms to cheerlead for those developments and those programs.
I think it's an interesting question, Emil. I think I would generally speaking say that, yeah, having Black media is really important. And I would say in comparison to social media, the reason I think that is because with social media, oftentimes the interest of who's putting the information out is about, what's the word? Where you're trying to sensationalize. And so you're trying to get lots of likes and follows and retweets and, you know, have something go viral. And with the traditional media publication, you know, it's not just, of course they want subscribers and they want, you know, retweets and all that too. But I think that the truth from a more balanced perspective is more important than something that leans one way than another. And with social media, you're more inclined to have folks who are putting out their point of view, their truth, but it may not necessarily be looking at both sides of the coin. So I think Black media certainly has an opportunity, you know, to represent for our culture and to share our stories in ways that they would not be shared in mainstream media and are not shared in mainstream media. So I think it's really important. And I think there's just a general interest there to share stories about us from multiple perspectives, as opposed to a very narrow narrative that traditional media projects, which is, you know, the criminalization, the dehumanization, all of the things that make us look bad. And so when people who have never encountered Black people, you know, first, if they've only been looking at traditional media sources, you know, they really have no idea what our culture truly is about.
That's powerful. That's real. And I bring that up just because I just see that as a community, I see a lot. I mean, we all are trying to do so much. In a lot of cases, not supportive of each other, but not utilizing the resources that are available to us to cheerlead what we're doing. And just trying to see how do we do a better job of using those tools to make sure the community is aware of some of the great things that are happening. Because like you just said, the Indy Star, nothing against them, I read it too, but they're not gonna write about all the great things Forest City is doing and all the different programs that are happening here in Indy. So the average citizen doesn't think anything is happening.
Mm-hmm.
The Halo app would have never got an IBJ article if we didn't have an Indianapolis Recorder article first, right? I mean, it took the Indianapolis Recorder believing in us as a minority organization and, you know, giving us, you know, some shout outs a couple times until the other people started noticing. Even though we reached out to IBJ and Indy Star, you know, several times prior, it felt like almost like, hey, we're not going to say yes to you until we see something somewhere else. We don't want to take the chance on you first. So I think what, you know, Indianapolis Recorder provides a unique perspective to take the chance on the minority entrepreneur first, because a lot of times we need that chance and we're begging for it. Like, hey, we're waving our hands. We're out here doing wonderful things, and we don't know why we're not getting mentioned. We don't know why we're not getting the attention in the media. You know, it's disheartening. And what it starts to do is it can start demotivating the minority entrepreneur or any entrepreneur more than it can motivate. So I think these media companies are essential in order for any minority entrepreneur to have a chance.
100%. You really have to work with the media, because they're a lot more influential than people give them credit for. Like, if you are not able to get through the media to get to the people, then there's a good chance you might not reach the people at all. And I think taking advantage of, the newspaper, social media outlets, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, stuff like that is also going to be important, because that's where a lot of people generally are at, right? That's where they're getting a lot of their information from. So you can either try to create your own forms of information, or you can take your information to where the people are at right now, where they're already getting these mixed up narratives from. 100%.
I think, obviously people don't trust the media as much as they hope for. But we don't reach the people, because what the media does provide is credibility, and people still need credibility in order to, use your product or access your product, right? They want that credibility. They want that trust.
Guys, we got 60 seconds, and we're going to be back in the big room. I want to just say thank you, guys. I really appreciate it. And at a minimum, all of us should take a subscription out to the Recorder. Support the Black media.
Support the Black media. We're going to be ending in the next 10 seconds. I also would like to thank everybody for coming, viewing, getting activated, getting organized. I love you all.
I appreciate the chance. Thank you so much. Thank you.